other breathing medications? Did you know that if you qualify, Medicare covers breathing medications that are already premixed? To find out if you qualify, call us at Med4Home.
Call toll-free 1-800-403-3609.
Is your child protected for the future? For years, Gerber has been telling you about the Grow Up Plan. It's a $5,000 cash value life insurance policy that costs less than $1 per week. At age 21, the protection doubles to $10,000 with no increase in premiums. Call now for your free information package. The Gerber Life Grow Up Plan, a solid investment in your child's future. Call now.
Call this toll-free number for free information about Gerber's Grow Up Plan. Call now.
This is CNN.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another expanded special edition of Talkback Live, America Speaks Out. Today, America is back at work, if not back to normal, but still in the back of everyone's minds. The question this week is retaliation. What happens next? Joining us first to talk about this today, Georgia Congressman Bob Barr. Also with us, Pat Schroeder, former Congresswoman from Colorado. She is currently President and CEO of the Association of American Publishers. Let me start with Congressman Barr for a few moments, if I could. I know that you circulated a declaration of war amongst your fellow congresspeople up in Washington. I know you probably got a fair amount of signatures on that. You ended up with an authorization of force. Is that enough?
Certainly I support the President in whatever he believes is most appropriate as Commander-in-Chief right now. My personal view is that we ought to be declaring war on international terrorism and those who harbor international terrorists. The reason, Bobby, that I and others have proposed this, including people such as former Ambassador to the UN, James Patrick, former Education Secretary Bennett.
We're having trouble with your mic. Let's switch it out there. There we go.
Former...
You're good.
Is that okay? Former Speaker Newt Gingrich and a number of others, is because only a declaration of war gives our president the maximum flexibility to proceed as he sees fit. If we go the route, Bobby, of simply proposing and then passing a specific military authorization for a particular purpose or period of time, that isn't sufficient to take us through the long haul or to contemplate all possible circumstances. So that's why I think it's so important to go the declaration of war route.
Kind of eliminates a lot of paperwork, I think is what you're saying.
Well, there are questions of international sovereignty that you surmount if you have a declaration of war under certain international conventions that you would otherwise have to worry about if you have simply a U.S. law authorizing force.
What do you think is appropriate action at this point in time?
I think it's appropriate to begin action very, very quickly to take out those international terrorist individuals, organizations, and infrastructure that we already know about. And we know a great deal about these people and these organizations, Bobby, even though their elusive nature may mean that we don't know where a particular individual is at every moment in time. We know where most of them are. We know where their infrastructure is. We know where their funding comes from. We know who harbor them. So there is an awful lot that can be done quickly. And I am not among those who subscribes to having to telegraph when we're going to do this. I believe that we ought to move quickly without any warning.
We heard the president say pretty much that Osama bin Laden should be taken in dead or alive. So I assume that you agree with him that these terrorists should be eliminated rather than brought to justice or brought to trial?
I'll let the Lord worry about justice for them. I think we ought to take them out and take them out as quickly as we can locate them. I don't think we need to worry about Miranda warnings in a war situation.
Let me bring a former Congresswoman, Pat Schroeder, into this. A declaration of war, do you think that's needed?
Well, obviously the problem is that we don't know the war against whom, but clearly everybody wants action, and we want action when we really know who we can target it. Now, I think Congressman Barr makes a lot of good points. We do have an awful lot of cells we know about, and as we hear more and more other countries saying they support us, it would be wonderful if everybody moved against the cells in their area. Obviously, Osama bin Laden, he has been, if not culpable in this incident and certainly many others, so no matter what, if you can find a way to finally capture him, the whole world would exhale. But not for too long, because there are others around too. I think one of the important pieces is also looking at the banking system. Maybe not the Swiss, but I would really like to know if this money came through Switzerland. You know, the rest of the world is having to be transparent, and yet we are finding that there are certain countries who don't do that, and I think they really are allowing these people to operate. And we really need to say to the global community, no more of that stuff. Everybody has to be transparent at this level. We really can't allow those laws to stay where people can hide their money and then do all sorts of evil things with it.
Congressman, wasn't an effort made to freeze Osama bin Laden's assets? How far did you get with that?
We haven't been able to do that yet, Bobby, but my good friend and former colleague Pat Schroeder makes a very, very good point. We do need to start putting considerable pressure on some of these international financial centers. We know, by and large, where the funds that supply Osama bin Laden and other of these terrorists come from. It's not just personal funds that they have, even though he personally is a very, very wealthy man. They get information, finances from a lot of different sources, and a lot of it, as Ms. Schroeder said, is funneled through accounts in Europe, including in Switzerland. And these countries could be doing an awful lot more than they have been doing to help us in the effort to locate and freeze these assets.
This man's network, and we heard Colin Powell refer to him today as basically the chairman of a holding company, is so far-flung. And some of these extremist fanatics are being harbored in a number of Arab countries. How do we go about this and walk that fine line where we have to accomplish what we need to in order to rid the world of terrorism, but we don't want to create some geopolitical disaster in the process?
Well, it is a fine line, and to be honest with you, I have tremendous faith in President Bush and Secretary Rumsfeld and our other leaders. I think we're in very, very good and capable hands. We also have very strong and knowledgeable bipartisan leadership in the Congress that will work with us. But it is a fine line. I think you have to begin military operations very quickly. Our people, by and large, are very supportive of that, and I think you can't overlook the importance of maintaining national unity and moving forward on behalf of the American people. But we also have to remember that a huge quantity of our petroleum that we need both for our civilian and our military operations comes from the Middle East. We haven't done a good job in the last 20 years of developing our own resources. So we can't just go in and start carpet bombing countries. We have to be smart about it. But you start where the main problem is, and that is in countries like Afghanistan and others who very clearly and in a lot of instances for a long period of time have been harboring and supporting these people, countries like Syria, Iraq, and Libya, and possibly Iran also.
Congresswoman?
Bobby, if I could add, I certainly agree with what the Congressman has said, but I think we have some other pieces we can do too. I am thankful every night that Colin Powell is our Secretary of State, because he had all of this high profile during the Gulf War. And it really is helpful to be able to say to some of those Gulf states who, let's face it, have been indirectly funding or directly funding some of these activities, mainly because they thought it would take some of the focus off of them. Wait a minute, you really ought to think about this. Guess who pulled your cookies out of the oven during the whole Gulf War? But for Colin Powell and the United States military and the whole U.S. government, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia may not be in the hands they're in now. I think we all know the answer to that. And so, as a consequence, I think it is really time to stop winking at their kind of playing both sides. It's like, well, you've got to understand we live in a difficult neighborhood, so wink, wink, we have your oil, you'll come if we're threatened, and meanwhile, we have to try and buy these folks out. I really think the American people are totally beyond any tolerance with that. So I think you try and shut that down. You try and go after banks that have been kind of hiding this in Switzerland and allowing this man to operate, because this took a huge amount of money. These people were never without money. So money was flowing. Money was flowing from all sorts of places. And I don't think the American public will tolerate that one more minute.
Let me go to a Gulf War vet on the phone, Kevin from Ohio. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yes, ma'am. As you say, I am a Gulf War veteran, and I do support going to war and getting the terrorists and making them pay for the damage and the harm and the pain that they've caused here in the United States. But I do hope that if we do go over there and we do cause a conflict, that we do it completely this time and not like Desert Storm. I mean, we liberated Kuwait over there, but the job was not finished. If we go after the terrorists that attacked our country, I want us to finish the job. The American people has taken America for granted, thinking it would never happen to us, it couldn't happen here. And now that it has happened, America is stunned because we thought we was this invincible country.
Kevin,
now we're,
I was going to thank you very much. I wanted the Congress folks here to address that. I'm not sure that we'll ever know that we're done in this war. Do you think, Congressman?
Well, Bobby, the question came up at a news conference we had in Washington last week when we announced the introduction of our proposed declaration of war. One of the media people in Washington asked, well, how will you know when we've won? I think we'll have a pretty good indication of when we will have at least achieved significant success. We may never eradicate from the face of the earth every terrorist, just the same as despite years of our war against mind-altering drugs, we'll never have a completely drug-free society. But that does not mean that we as a nation don't try. And I think, again, as I said and as others have said, we know a great deal about these organizations, I think, and people already, as we've gotten into the first week since this tragedy, we're finding out disturbing things about how much we actually did know, but the right information didn't get to the right people and so forth.
I was going to say, if we knew so much, how did intelligence miss this one?
Well, that's one of the most fundamental questions that we're starting to look at, and I think it is a question that we have to get some answers to. I think we're seeing, unbelievably as it is, 60 years after Pearl Harbor, Bobby, we're still seeing some of the same problems that plagued us back then. Poor cooperation from between our different intelligence agencies, people tending to discount certain very important information or intelligence that came in, lack of proper coordination, things not getting to the right people, and then, of course, the problems in executing proper security measures at our airports. It's really not so much the traveling public that is the problem here. It's allowing people access to the most sensitive areas of airports without background checks, without properly following up on lost badges, lost flight manuals, lost uniforms, and paperwork and so forth. These are very, very serious problems. And even though it's important perhaps for us to look at what new powers, if any, we need to grant our government, I'm not interested in a headlong rush to pass more laws and take away more civil liberties. I think the problems are with enforcement of existing laws.
All right, hold on just a second here. Let me go to the audience. Reverend, do you have concerns?
It concerns me that we have not yet finished mourning the people who are considered or assumed to be dead, and there's many lives that are still coming up lost. There are families that are suffering and will continue to suffer. And it's my concern that we don't need to rush right now and send our young kids over there to shed more blood. We need to kind of get those who have been affected by this, let's give them a decent burial. And then I call on all the churches in America. Let's the churches step up to the plate and adopt a family. Let's the churches provide $1,000 to each one of these families, because we got breadwinners that are gone, that are lost, and children that don't have fathers, children that don't have mothers. We got breadwinners that have been lost, and I think now is the greatest time that the church can come forward, stand up, and give $1,000 to each family through the Red Cross. Let the Red Cross identify a family. the church would send that $1,000 to the Red Cross.
Good
The Red
idea,
Cross
Reverend. We're putting you in charge of that. Okay.
I would love to be in charge of that.
All right.
Through the Red Cross only, though.
Let me get an opinion here from Jason quickly.
My opinion is this. You have to remember, this has not bin Laden's first attack against the United States. This is a repeated several of attacks, and he is not going to stop. We have to take action against him and his organization.